Thank you so much for all your incredible love and support. If you enjoyed this story and want to experience more spine-chilling tales, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a frightful new video. I was so excited for my first date with Jake. We'd been chatting online for weeks, and he seemed like such a great guy. Smart, funny, and super cute in his photos. We agreed to meet at a trendy new restaurant downtown. The date started off amazing. Jake was even more charming in person. We laughed and talked for hours over dinner and drinks. I felt like I'd known him forever. Before I knew it, it was nearly midnight. Jake offered to drive me home since I'd taken an Uber there. I happily accepted, not wanting the night to end. As we got in his car, Jake suggested taking a scenic detour to show me this cool spot he knew of. I was having such a great time that I agreed without hesitation. At first, we were just driving through quieter residential streets, but soon the houses became more sparse. The streetlights fewer and farther between. An uneasy feeling started to creep in. We seemed to be heading out of the city entirely. I casually asked how much further this place was. Jake mumbled something vague about it being just up ahead. His tone had changed. He wasn't as warm and engaging anymore. The houses disappeared completely. We were on a dark, winding road with dense forest on both sides. No other cars in sight. My heart started racing. This didn't feel right at all. I told Jake I was getting tired and asked if we could head back now. He ignored me and sped up instead. Panic set in as I realized the danger I was in. How could I have been so stupid? I didn't really know this guy at all. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. Should I try to grab the wheel? Jump out of the moving car? I had no idea where we were or how to get help. I noticed Jake kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Was he worried someone was following us, or making sure no one would see what he was about to do to me? My imagination went to horrible places. I felt utterly trapped and helpless. Just then I remembered the pepper spray keychain in my purse. If I could get my hands on it without Jake noticing, maybe I'd have a chance. I casually reached for my purse on the floor, trying not to alert Jake. My fingers frantically searched for the small canister. Jake's eyes were fixed on the road ahead. We were going so fast now, taking sharp turns. The tires squealed. I gripped the pepper spray tightly, my thumb on the trigger. I had to time this perfectly. Suddenly, Jake slammed on the brakes. We screeched to a stop in a small clearing. This was my chance. As Jake turned towards me, I unleashed the pepper spray directly in his face. He howled in pain, completely disoriented. I flung open the door and ran as fast as I could into the woods. Branches whipped my face as I sprinted blindly through the darkness. I could hear Jake yelling and crashing through the trees behind me. Pure adrenaline propelled me forward. After what felt like hours, I finally saw lights in the distance. I emerged from the forest onto a main road. A gas station glowed like a beacon of hope. I burst through the doors, sobbing and begging the startled clerk to call the police. The next few hours were a blur of police statements and hospital examinations. I was physically okay, just some cuts and bruises from running through the woods, but I knew the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. They never caught Jake. His online profile was fake. The car he'd been driving was stolen. I tormented myself thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't acted when I did. The police said I was lucky to have escaped. It's been months now, but I still have nightmares about that night. I'm in therapy, trying to work through the trauma and learn to trust again. But it's a slow process. I'm much more cautious now. No more online dating for me, and I always carry pepper spray, just in case. I know not every first date will turn into a horror story like mine did, but I hope sharing my experience will remind others to be careful. Trust your instincts. Have an exit plan. Let friends know where you're going. It's better to seem paranoid than to end up in real danger. Looking back, there were red flags I ignored. Jake was a little too perfect online. He pushed to meet in person very quickly. During the date, he pressured me to drink more than I was comfortable with. I should have listened to that little voice telling me something was off. I'm gradually regaining my confidence and independence. But I'll never forget how quickly a dream date turned into a nightmare. I'm just thankful I made it out alive to tell my story and hopefully help others stay safe. I never thought a first date could turn into such a nightmare. It all started when I matched with Sarah on a dating app. Her profile looked promising, cute photos, similar interests, and a witty bio. We chatted for a few days and decided to meet up for drinks at a local bar. When I arrived, Sarah was already there. She looked even better in person, with a warm smile and stylish outfit. We hit it off right away, laughing and swapping stories over cocktails. She seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, asking lots of questions about my job, hobbies, and background. At first I was flattered by all the attention, but as the night went on I started to feel a bit uneasy. Sarah's questions were getting more and more personal, especially when it came to my finances. She wanted to know details about my salary, savings, and career aspirations. I tried to steer the conversation in other directions, but she kept circling back to money topics. Things took an even weirder turn when Sarah started gushing about this amazing business opportunity she was involved with. Apparently it was some kind of health and wellness company that was going to revolutionize the industry. The way she described it, it sounded too good to be true. Flexible hours, unlimited earning potential, be your own boss, etc. My scam radar was starting to ping. The whole thing reeked of a multi-level marketing scheme. I politely expressed skepticism, but Sarah wouldn't take no for an answer. She kept pushing, insisting I'd be perfect for it, and I had to get in on the ground floor. When I still wasn't biting, she suggested we continue the conversation somewhere more private. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go with her to a nearby coffee shop. Big mistake. As soon as we walked in, I realized it was a setup. 3 of Sarah's business partners were waiting for us at a table. They immediately launched into a rehearsed pitch about their company, complete with a flashy PowerPoint presentation on a laptop. I felt totally ambushed and cornered. Every time I tried to make an excuse to leave, they had a counter-argument ready. They tag-teamed me with question after question, barely letting me get a word in. The pressure was intense. They kept emphasizing how this was a limited-time offer, and I'd be foolish to pass it up. At one point, they even tried to get me to sign up on the spot and hand over my credit card info. That's when I knew I had to get out of there fast. I made up an emergency and said I had to go immediately. They seemed annoyed, but finally backed off a bit. As I was gathering my things to leave, Sarah made one last desperate attempt. She grabbed my arm and quietly offered to sweeten the deal if I signed up that night, while giving me a suggestive look. I was shocked and disgusted. This whole date had been nothing but a ploy to recruit me into their pyramid scheme. I firmly told Sarah and her cronies that I wasn't interested and practically ran out of there. My heart was pounding as I speed-walked down the street, half expecting them to chase after me. Luckily, they didn't follow, but I still felt shaken up. The next day, I woke up to a barrage of messages from Sarah and the others, still trying to convince me to join their business. I blocked all their numbers and reported Sarah's profile on the dating app. Looking back, there were probably some red flags I missed early on. I guess I was blinded by Sarah's looks and charm. It was definitely one of the worst dating experiences of my life. I felt used and manipulated. What I thought was a promising romantic connection turned out to be nothing but a scam. The whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth and made me wary of online dating for a while. I ended up taking a break from dating apps after that fiasco. When I did start using them again, I was much more cautious. I paid closer attention to potential warning signs and tried to vet matches more thoroughly before meeting in person. I also made a rule to always meet in public places and have an exit strategy planned. The silver lining is that the experience taught me to trust my instincts more. If something feels off on a date, it probably is. It's okay to cut things short or leave if you're uncomfortable. Your safety and well-being should always come first. I'm glad I was able to get out of that situation without getting roped into their scheme. Some people aren't so lucky and end up losing money or getting trapped in these predatory MLMs. It's made me more aware of how these companies operate and prey on people's vulnerabilities. I've since had much better dating experiences and even met my current girlfriend through an app. But I'll never forget that disastrous first date with Sarah. It's become a crazy story I tell at parties sometimes. Most people are shocked that someone would go to such lengths just to make a sale. In the end, I learned some valuable lessons about setting boundaries, spotting red flags, and trusting my gut. While I wouldn't want to relive that night, I can appreciate how it's made me a savvier dater and more discerning person overall. I just hope Sarah and her associates eventually saw the light and got out of that toxic business. Nobody deserves to be manipulated like that, whether in dating or in work. These days, when I match with someone new, I'm much more upfront about my expectations. I make it clear I'm looking for a genuine connection, not a business opportunity. And at the first sign of any MLM talk, I'm out of there. Life's too short for bad dates and pyramid schemes. I never thought I'd end up in a cult, That's not the kind of thing you expect when you're just trying to meet someone nice for a date. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and boy did I get a doozy. It all started when I matched with this guy, Luke, on a dating app. His profile looked great, handsome, into meditation and spirituality, works as a life coach. We chatted for a bit and he seemed really sweet and genuine. When he suggested meeting up for our first date at a weekend meditation retreat, I was intrigued. I'd always wanted to try something like that, and it seemed like a unique first date idea. The day of the retreat arrived and I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I packed an overnight bag and drove out to this remote property in the countryside. It was beautiful, all rolling hills and forests. The main building was this big old farmhouse that had been converted into a retreat center. Luke was there to greet me when I arrived. He gave me a warm hug and helped me with my bag. There were about 20 other people there for the retreat. Everyone seemed friendly enough, if a bit intense. They all wore these plain white outfits that Luke said were traditional meditation clothes. He gave me a set to change into. The first few hours weren't too bad. We did some guided meditations and breathing exercises. It was actually pretty relaxing, but then things started to get weird. The group leader, this guy they called the teacher, gave a long rambling speech about finding your true self and breaking free from society's brainwashing. He kept talking about how we were all chosen and special. I started to get an uneasy feeling in my stomach. I glanced over at Luke, hoping to catch his eye, but he was staring raptly at the teacher with this glassy-eyed expression. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some New Age retreat. It was a cult. My mind started racing, trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to just grab my stuff and bolt, but I was afraid of causing a scene. Plus, we were in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know exactly where we were located. As the day went on, it only got worse. There were more speeches about letting go of your old life and devoting yourself to the work. They kept us constantly busy with activities and rituals. I realized they were using sleep deprivation and sensory overload tactics to wear us down. Luke stuck close to me the whole time, always touching my arm or putting his hand on my back. At first I thought he was being sweet, but I began to realize he was actually hurting me, making sure I didn't wander off or talk to anyone else alone. That night we all slept in this big dormitory room. I lay awake for hours, my mind whirling. How had I gotten myself into this? How was I going to get out? I kept remembering stories I'd read about people who joined cults and never escaped. The thought of being trapped here forever made me feel sick. The next morning, I knew I had to act. They were planning to take our phones away that day as part of a digital detox. If that happened, I'd have no way to contact anyone outside. I pretended to be totally into everything, nodding and smiling. When we broke for lunch, I told Luke I wasn't feeling well and asked if I could go lie down for a bit. He seemed concerned but agreed, telling me he'd come check on me soon. As soon as I was alone, I grabbed my phone and ran. I sprinted through the woods, stumbling over roots and branches, my heart pounding. I could hear shouting behind me. They'd realized I was gone. I finally reached the main road and flagged down a passing car. The elderly couple inside looked alarmed at my appearance, wild-eyed, still in those white cold clothes, out of breath. But they let me in when I begged them to help. I called the police from their car and reported everything. They took it seriously, thank goodness. Within a few hours, the whole place was swarming with cops. They shut down the retreat and arrested the leaders. Turns out the whole thing was even worse than I realized. They'd been operating for years, scamming people out of money and keeping them isolated from their families. Luke wasn't just some innocent victim. He was one of their main recruiters, using dating apps to lure in new members. The aftermath was rough. I had to give statements to the police and talk to lawyers. My family and friends were shocked when they found out what happened. I felt so stupid for falling for it all. But mostly, I just felt incredibly lucky that I got out when I did. It's been a few months now and I'm still processing everything. I've been seeing a therapist to work through it all. I deleted all the dating apps off my phone. I think I'll be taking a break from that scene for a while. Sometimes I still have nightmares about being trapped there, but mostly I'm just grateful. Grateful that I trusted my instincts. Grateful that I found the courage to run. And grateful that I can use my experience to help educate others about the dangers of cults and how they operate. I never expected a first date to turn into a fight for my freedom, but life is full of surprises, both good and bad. All we can do is stay alert, trust our gut, and be ready to run like hell when we need to.